So hi, maybe you can just introduce yourself first. Your name and what currently you are doing right now.
Okay, so my name is Erika Cheung, and currently I'm the Executive Director of Ethics and Entrepreneurship, a nonprofit based out in the US. And what I'm most well known for is being a key whistleblower in the Theranos scandal.
So from your experience of working in Theranos, what safeguards actually that can be put in place in organizations to address any ethical issues that might arise?
Yeah, so I think there are lots of safeguards and that can be put into place. I think one that was very obvious that could have been implemented was having a mechanism for employees to kind of come forward and speak up and that be taken seriously, and that there's a proper investigation that's conducted and some sort of corrective action that could have taken place in order to make sure that the issue was addressed. But before that, you of course need a speak-up culture, an organization that really values when someone has an issue, that they're able to be honest and candid about those problems. So I think that was a big learning from that, especially if you're a bootstrapping startup and you don't have a lot of resources. It's amazing how something as simple as trusting your employees to sort of allow you to know when something is wrong can really go a long way. And I think that would have been an immensely valuable safeguard to have if they also had the leadership to sort of make sure that any complaint or concern was taken seriously. I think another is ethical cultures, right? And having strong values and really sticking with those values in the course of doing business. The culture can really dictate, what are the processes, what are the policies, what are the procedures that you have within a business. And so being very conscious of the culture that you have within your organization as it grows is really key to having well-developed programs that can protect an organization and protect the various stakeholders that organization interfaces with.
What can business leaders or even employees do when they realize that there's something wrong in the organization and they feel that they should voice up?
Yeah, so I think the first thing to do is to really collect evidence, right? To really see, okay, what is the incident that we're talking about? When I say that there's something wrong, what is that? What is happening? Who are the people involved? What are the systems that it interacts with? What do I know about the situation? What might I not know? And it's really important to kind of write that information down and to have an objective perspective on that particular incident, because that'll help carry it forward to the appropriate people who can maybe do something about it, right? So I always tell people that the most beneficial thing you can do for yourself as an individual is to have clarity and really good evidence on what it is that's happening that you don't think is right. And then from there, I think it's really important to figure out who your allies are and to be able to just check with them, because sometimes depending on what type of organization, say if the issue is with your boss, do you take it up with your boss right away, or do you take it up with other people to sort of check and see, what I'm seeing, what I think I'm seeing, does this seem wrong to you? And so sometimes that can help to garner more perspective on the issue without necessarily making a claim against someone. And then from there, I would suggest once you have that case, in addition to the vetting around it, ideally you have an infrastructure that people can take that to, whether that's an ombudsman, whether that's a third-party agency, whether that's the board or some sort of whistleblowing hotline. But alternatively, if not, then really thinking critically about who is that next person that I need to take it to, and maybe that could be a law firm or an advocacy organization to sort of carry the concern fully. But I always tell people, start with the evidence. Start with the evidence, that's the most important part.
You need that. But
Yeah.
okay, so something that I'm really interested in is that a lot of times in these cases, employees might feel the fear of speaking out. They might feel the pressure of staying, some loyal to a company, for example. So in your case, just wanted to understand what guided you, what compelled you to finally speak out?
Yeah, I always tell business leaders you have to think of these things, right? People are scared to speak up because they feel if they say something, it's futile, nothing's going to be done about it. They're scared of retaliation, and then they're also scared of social rejection. You know, no one wants to sort of be cast aside by your team members or by other people in the organization because you said something that maybe involved them, maybe it didn't. And also people don't want to feel like they're complicit in the bad thing that's happening, right? And they're scared that they're going to be implicated if they sort of say something. So always being conscious of those are barriers to having people speak up. I think in my case, the reason why it was a bit easier to sort of speak up was, you know, the sense of responsibility to the patients, right? These are people's lives. This could have been my sister, this could have been my brother. And the fact that it was very clear to me that these people had every right to make sure that they got accurate information about their house status like anyone else, it made it very clear in my mind why I kept trying to continue seeking channels in which the truth could get out, so the company would stop basically processing patient samples with this technology that was so clearly not working. And yeah, it's just that sense of responsibility, that empathy for, you know, the person behind this tiny little blood sample that I was dealing with, I think was able to sort of carry it forward despite it being scary in many moments.
Right. So in today's world, I mean, organizations need to be innovative and to move fast in order to stay ahead. But from your own perspective, like how can organizations best balance between like making sure that ethical standards are met, but at the same time being innovative as well?
Right. I think first starting off that it doesn't have to be a trade-off. You know, it doesn't have to be the case that either you have strong ethical standards or you have innovation. You can incorporate both, and it's being creative in order to figure out how do I make sure that I'm able to integrate these two concepts. So one is, of course, figuring out, okay, when these decisions get really hard in the sense of innovation, right, there can be all these unintended consequences of things that you don't expect. And so how do you sort of reconcile some of those? You know, starting with those value statements of figuring out, based on our values, how do we make decisions? And in addition to that, what are the boundaries as an organization that we're not going to cross? And we're going to say, we're going to put our foot down, that this is not okay with us to engage in this type of behavior. And setting that tone can be very helpful in these circumstances that you have these kind of gray decisions. I think also having good advisory networks who are maybe outside of the organization for especially very difficult problems that require a certain level of expertise in an area that may not be in the scope of what the organization does, because innovation is typically you're doing something new, you're going into a territory that you have some insight into, but maybe not all the details of, and hiring that outside counsel, having steering committees, advisory boards, and whether that's you build it internally in the organization or have some external vetting can be very, very helpful. And also just making sure that you have good governance structures. There's lots of best practices out there to sort of monitor some of these new innovations and to sort of learn from how people have handled it in the past and maybe applying those same principles to the new types of technologies or innovations or services that you might be developing.
So in today's world, I mean, there's a lot of pushback and criticisms against like corporate organizations, business organizations. So how can organizations still build trust with like the stakeholders and also consumers?
Right, yeah. I think one of the ways is you know, we kind of have to build more cooperative conversations between each of the different stakeholders. And ideally, once you figure out, okay, what are the needs of each of these individuals? What are the needs of the customers? What are the needs of the investors? What are the needs of the vendors and suppliers? And really kind of operate with a certain level of understanding and willingness to sort of hear their side and then be able to sort of sift out, okay, how do we now take all this and figure out how we can collaborate best? And it's always going to be difficult, right? Because each stakeholder is going to have their own interests, and sometimes there's going to have to be trade-offs. But I think being honest and open and transparent about those processes is something that people are really looking for at this moment, because it does garner a lot of trust and understanding about where do you stand. Can I rely on the fact that, I know what's kind of going on and what's going to happen in terms of our interactions? And I think building those communications over time and showing your commitment of like, I want to make sure that we have a situation that everyone can benefit from this relationship, and this is how I'm actually putting this into practice, is a very valuable process for organizations and businesses to think about. It is hard, it is tough, right? Because like I said, they're trade-offs, right? It's hard to make everyone happy. But I think the more we are open about those conversations of like, look, I'm trying to do the best I can given the circumstance and situation that I'm in, and I hear you, I hear what your needs are, I understand what your kind of priorities are, but this is kind of where we can compromise and maybe meet in the middle. And I think even just facilitating that is fairly powerful.
So today you have heard from our CEO Rajiv about like the role of stewardship and steward leadership in helping business organizations. So I mean, from your own perspective, how do you see like these concepts gelling in with the work that you have done currently, and how does it help businesses moving forward in today's climate?
I think the big thing in terms of the climate that we're seeing is definitely with resiliency, right? We are at a point in time where we're really going to have to think about how does everyone kind of work together to take care of one another. We have a lot of different crises, whether that's more pandemics and infectious disease outbreaks, whether it's climate change, whether it's economic and socio-political unrest. There's going to be a lot of issues that we're going to face in the future. So the more we're oriented towards service, the more we're oriented towards values that are about collective benefit versus just individual interest, chances are everyone is going to be able to thrive amongst very volatile circumstance. So when I look at these instances of people trying to figure out how do we step in as leaders and really prepare ourselves for the fact that things are going to get challenging, they are going to get hard. Things like steward leadership are really trying to provide a framework for people to operate by, to build that resiliency, to make sure that when we go through these tough times, that people are going to still be able to thrive despite that uncertainty and challenges that they might transverse. So I think that's the benefit that we're seeing.
Yeah, that's our hope as well. So thank you so much for sharing your insights and thoughts today. Really appreciate you coming down here.
Yeah,
right.
definitely. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Yeah.